Welcome to Ghosts and Grit.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to Ghosts and Grit. On this episode, I'm joined by my co-host from Portals to Hell, Katrina Weidman. We do a deep dive into our investigation of Bobby Mackey's music world. This episode, when we shot it, was wild. We had a lot of crazy things happen actually during the investigation and then after. Both her and I actually believe something followed us home. If you haven't seen Portals to Hell, please go check it out on the Discovery Plus app or on TRVL Channel. This episode is Season 1, Episode 2, Bobby Mackey's Music World.
Alrighty, how's it going? It is Jack Osborne.
And Katrina Weidman.
All right, Katrina, what episode are we doing next?
Oh, I am so excited. You guys, this one you want to buckle up for because this is one of the most infamously haunted places in America, Bobby Mackey's Music World.
In, of all places, Wilder, Kentucky.
It's a wild day we're about to have.
It's so interesting. Do you remember when, for some reason, this always pops into my head whenever anyone says Bobby Mackey's, is that for a while on Portals, we kept coming up with what would the porno name be for each episode?
Yes.
Do you remember what Bobby Mackey's were?
Oh, man, I don't. What was it?
It was Bobby Mackey's Basement Butt Stuff.
Such a good one.
I mean, I'm glad people are listening to this because I think they actually can get a sense of how fucked up our sense of humor is.
We have a really fucked up sense of humor, guys. And we've said it a bunch of times, I think, in press, but nobody believes us.
No. All right. So Bobby Mackey's. This place is a thing of legend, I guess. And what was your experience with Bobby Mackey's before we investigated that?
So I had always heard of Bobby Mackey's. And what I had heard was that if you go to Bobby Mackey's, you're going to have the, quote, Bobby Mackey experience, which is normally like getting thrown up against the wall by a demon, getting the shit scratched out of you, and you walk out of there a completely changed person.
Yeah.
You know, these are the stories I had always heard. And so the first time I went for another show I worked on called Paranormal Lockdown. And the premise of that show was we would kind of confine ourselves to the property for 72 hours. Right. Like, who wants to do that? So
I feel like you would have got a fungal infection being there for 72 hours.
I may or may not have. But so we went there. And I got to tell you, I did not have the Bobby Mackey experience. We had things happen, but it was nothing. I mean, no demon came. I didn't get scratched. Like, nobody got thrown up against the wall. So all of these stories I had heard prior to you and I going, and my experience, they didn't seem to match up. Not to say that other people's experiences weren't true. Yeah. They just weren't mine. So when I found out we were going for Portals, I was like, cool. Like, this should be fun.
Round two.
Round two, I'll see Bobby. He's a great guy. So I was excited to go back.
He has a great mullet.
He's
Great mullet. He's ridden the mullet wave back into fashion. He's ridden that like peak and valley like 4 times now.
He's like, I'm sticking with it.
Yes.
Because at some point it's going to come back.
Committed.
Yeah.
Hats off to him.
So what had you heard prior to going there?
So I'd only heard kind of like what you were saying, like the kind of salacious stuff about Bobby Mackey's. Oh, there's a portal in the basement, and it's demonic entities everywhere, and same thing. People get violently attacked and thrown, and kind of wild response to the place. And so I was excited, and I knew that going into this investigation, we were going to bring Cindy Kaza along for the ride, and I had not done an investigation with Cindy. She'd been a friend of mine for a long time. We hadn't investigated yet, though. And so I was excited, being like, okay, this is going to be cool. Like, this is, the Alaskan episode felt a bit, it was like the pilot. And so and with this one, a few weeks had passed, and like, we were like, all right, we know what we're doing now. So it was, I was just excited. I wanted to kind of get stuck in and,
There's nothing of you that was a little nervous to go.
I think what actually made me the most nervous, and this is kind of fast forwarding a bit, was when we met with the priest.
Oh yeah.
He kind of freaked me out. He was like, "Oh no, it's when a man with the white collar is telling you like beware of demons." Like, I've seen The Exorcist, all right? I need an old priest and a young priest. It was weird. Very weird. And it kind of, I got a little spooked.
Yeah. It's Bobby Mackey's definitely has a lot of foreshadowing.
So what, I guess for people who don't know about Bobby Mackey's, what do you know of the history?
You know, the hard history is that the original building was built there in 1850 and it was a slaughterhouse. At some point that was torn down, but the original wells are still there. And that's what, you know, we'll go into that later with, you know, Carl Lawson, who was the caretaker of the place. But it was a couple of different establishments. Like it was an inn at one point. It was the Primrose, which was owned by mobsters. So it's always kind of had a little bit of a seedier history, depending, you know, I mean, regardless if it was Bobby Mackey's or not. In 78, Bobby Mackey takes over, turns it into the honky tonk, and he's been there ever since. There's been some weird history about Pearl Bryan. She was a murder victim. Everyone attributes her story to the haunting because the legend was they found her head in the well. But the true story of Pearl O'Brien was she was actually murdered like 2 to 4 miles away from Bobby Mackey's. She was murdered by, it's hard to say if both people were involved or if it was just one person. But as the story goes, it was her boyfriend and a guy he kind of enlisted. Now, the guy he kind of enlisted was noted to be slower. So the cops at the time didn't think he was capable of putting this all together. And as the story goes, she was pregnant. Her boyfriend did not want her to have a child, tried to induce a bunch of abortions. They didn't work. He tried to kill her by giving her like cocaine. Didn't work. So then they murdered her and decapitated her. And so the story had evolved to they threw her head in the well. And that's part of why Bobby Mackey's is so haunted. So then we have Bobby Mackey taking over in 78, though, and turning it into a honky tonk. He has his caretaker, and this is kind of where the hauntings start to kick up or at least become widely known because his caretaker, Carl Lawson, starts having these crazy experiences where he's seen this woman with long dark hair who's telling him to look for the well. And wouldn't you know it, he finds a freaking well. He like digs up the floor, the concrete floor, and finds a well under it. Didn't
he also like say that he would hear like hundreds of people in the bar below him and then he would come down and there'd be no one there?
Yeah, well, you had the interview with the guide, so I missed a lot of what she said about Carl. What do you remember?
I remember her saying how like obsessed with the bar Carl was. And even when he was like sick and they were like, no, Carl, you gotta leave, he'd be like, no, I must stay. And he literally, as I recall, he died on the property, didn't he?
He died in 2012. I know that.
I think I'm just trying to remember because it was so long ago now. But yeah, it was. You know, I always like I always say, you know, any ghost guide or ghost, you know, the in-house ghost hunter, you always kind of have to be like, all right, because obviously the more haunted they are, the more they have a job.
Yeah.
So it's yeah. You know, you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. But she didn't seem kooky. You know, she was very credible. She was very, she just seemed like a normal woman.
When you watch back the episode, that was my takeaway about her too. She seemed very level-headed because even you asked one point about Carl, you're in his apartment and she starts telling the story of Johanna, which is not backed up by fact in any way, shape, or form as far as did this person actually exist.
Yeah.
And I love that she put that caveat in there of we don't actually have anything to back this up.
Yeah.
But what we do have is Carl did find a well when the spirit was telling him there's a well.
Yeah. There's something to that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, is that, okay, what is that? Is that, you know, some kind of divine, you know, is he getting some message from the other side? Is he, maybe subconsciously he heard something about a well, like, you don't know. You know? But there was a very, like, they did describe, I remember them describing that he became obsessed with digging, like, and finding this well.
That is very much like the Stir of Echoes.
Yeah.
I wonder if they got the idea for Stir of Echoes from Carl Lawson.
I wonder. I mean, time period similar.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think, well, actually, what is your takeaway about it?
With
Carl.
With Carl?
Yeah.
You know, obviously having not didn't know the guy, only kind of knew about what was kind of relayed second and third hand, I've been to enough locations that have been, allegedly haunted to know that the caretakers it becomes almost a part of their identity as well. And so I wonder if, he was having these experiences, whether, whatever one's opinion is of the paranormal, whether it's psychological, whether it's some, a spiritual event, or whatever it is, it can give people purpose. I've seen how it knowing or feeling or thinking that there's some kind of paranormal event at a location you happen to live at and work at, it awakens people in a way, and it gives people this fuel. I see it all the time, and I'm sure you have too. It's like it's really weird.
Yeah. So you think that's what was going on with Carl a little bit?
Yeah, I think it probably gave him a huge, gave him purpose and gave him a sense of like, because for me when I'm in like ghost hunting mode, because when I'm not working, I kind of shut it off. I don't read ghosts. I don't watch ghost stuff. I just kind of, always, because we're filming during Halloween, but I always get into the horror, the season. But I put up a wall because it kind of hurts my head.
Yes.
It's so, because you're constantly questioning reality.
Yep.
And even like I do believe that there is something, 100%. I just don't know definitively what it is.
Yeah.
And I can see that if you're living in a place 24/7 and that is highly active, and there possibly is good stuff there and there's possibly bad stuff there, it makes you question everything.
I think the most interesting thing about Carl, regardless of what people think the supernatural is or isn't, or what was going on in the bar, whether it was psychological or even, there's some wonky EMF going on there. And there's some scientists that believe EMF can make you think you're having supernatural experiences. But regardless, I go back to what the tour guide told you. It doesn't matter, because he still found this freaking well under concrete and a ghost was telling him. So it's something happened to this man. What is the genesis of that? I don't know.
Yeah.
But something happened.
Yeah. He didn't just, that's a hell of a coincidence to just have a thought about digging. There's a well there, and then you dig and you find a well there.
And also Bobby Mackey's, it's hard to tell on camera, but that basement is freaking huge. Mm-hmm. I'm not good at square footage. Are you good at?
I would say it's probably easily, because it's kind of like a barn.
Yeah.
Because you could like park a car under there because it's built into the side of a hill.
Yeah.
So I would say it's well over 2,500 square feet with all the little rooms down there.
It's enormous. So to find that exact spot.
Yeah.
I don't know. Demon, psychic energy, something happened to that man.
Have you ever had any kind of psychic messages come through for things for you?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
What's been the thing that like comes out to you like first and like, yeah.
The weirdest one was I'm not going to say the name because I don't want people to go and look them up, but it was 2007 or 2008. And God, it's also hippy dippy because I was meditating really heavily at the time. But like I was like getting into meditation, and I'm a very sleepy girl. So like I love sleep. So when I would meditate, I'd fall into these like really deep, intense sleeps, and I would wake up with these dreams that I had. And, which brings me to another one. I'll tell you another one, which is crazy. And I actually don't know if I should say it. Fuck it. I'll say it. But the first one, I'll tell you, fell asleep, had this dream. And I was in this town and it was lined with cars. There were cars everywhere. And there was this mom and her two daughters. And the mom came up to me and she's like, will you take a picture of me and my daughter? I was like, sure. And she just kind of got next to the one daughter. And the other daughter was left out of the picture. I was like, don't you want your other daughter in there? And she's like, how dare you? My daughter is dead. And the daughter who was being left out turned to me and said, please tell my mom I'm not foolish. Tell her I'm not foolish. And I woke up and I could not shake this dream. It was stuck in my head. So I Googled because I got the name And I had another name that I thought was her last name. I Googled those two things. And it came up that a young girl named the other name I got was not a last name. It was the county in which she died, had died because she hit a parked car. And she had died, I think it was only a couple months before I had that dream.
Wow.
That one really shook me and I stopped meditating.
You're like, nope.
They were going to put the pause button on that one. The other one, this is really fucked up. I was dating... I wasn't always the best in my choices of dating people. I had some emotional issues I had to work through before I found my husband. But I was dating this guy and I knew he was lying to me. I just knew it, but he would not tell me the truth. And I was like so stubborn at that time in my life where like, I'm not going to break up with you until I get the truth. You know, that's how fucking crazy I was. So I was like, I'm going to catch him. This is so fucked up, but I swear to God it's true. I had a dream of what his password was to his social media.
And
it was right.
That's crazy.
And I found all these messages to strippers.
Okay. So you had a type?
I had it. Yeah, I guess so. That was that. But that was, yeah, and it continues to this day where I'll dream of my friends that are pregnant who they don't know they're pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks later, they find out they're pregnant. Dreams of people dying. That actually just happened. I had 2 dreams and then things happened to people. Within the last month this happened.
Okay.
So because there's a thought of like dreams that come true, people are like, well, then you would change your behavior to make them come true, which I'm on like, so like if you dream you're going to fail a test, then you might start changing your behavior and you'll fail that test.
Mm-hmm.
But like things like pregnancy, I'm not involved in that with other people. Like I'm not like in the bedroom with them, you know, or somebody dying or somebody getting sick. That's out of your control.
Yeah.
So I really do think there's something to ESP.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I've had weird, not nearly as like intense as that, but like I've had weird things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like the funny thing is, I think it happens more often than not. People experience this way more often than they will sometimes even acknowledge.
Yeah.
So then you start getting into like the whole quantum, like, you know, what timeline are we on? Is this reality actually a simulation?
Yeah.
Is this game been coded before and we're just playing it out? Like, what is it?
We could go down a whole rabbit hole with this one.
Well, and that's the thing too, which I get so people tell me all the time. They're like, "Oh, you don't actually believe in ghosts, do you?" Da 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 da. And because ghost is such a loaded question.
Yeah.
And you and I have had deep conversations about it. And my quick answer I tell people is I just don't think it's what we think it is.
Same.
It's too complicated. It's like going up to an ant and being like, explain calculus to me. An ant is going to have no concept of calculus.
Watch it though. You find an ant who's like, actually, has a little calculator and like a protractor.
Breaking it all down. You're like, that's the answer. But yeah, I don't, and part of me thinks like maybe we're not ever meant to know.
So so then do you fall more into the category of it is supernatural in some way?
Sort of.
Yeah.
I guess a part of me would fall on that, but then when I start kind of poking holes in that, I go, is it only supernatural because we don't understand it? And the moment you understand something, it's no longer supernatural. It's just, if it becomes fact.
I think we put a lot of human qualities on the experiences, and historically and anthropologically.
Yeah.
Which word is right? Anthropologically? Anthropologically.
I'll go with it.
Yeah. That sounds right. When we start looking at people's experiences like hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, it was, we, in the absence of data, we fill in the holes.
Yes.
And so and when we look at people who had gods and goddesses for every phenomenon that there was, it wasn't that they weren't experiencing something. They just never understood what was behind the phenomena. And I think that's kind of where we are with a lot of this stuff that is currently unexplainable. We just don't know. So we put these human qualities on it.
Yeah. And I tend to, I always say that. I'm always like, I use the term ghost and haunting as a catch-all.
Yeah.
It's an easy stamp on an unexplainable event.
And I think that's also, we get a lot of questions with this for portals. And it's funny that, it definitely feeds into Bobby Mackey's with the word demon, because I know I've done a lot of podcasts. You've done podcasts. We've done press together where we get that question about, is it a demon?
Yeah.
And then you and I have to go into, we say demon because if I say it or if you say it, we know exactly what each other is we know what we're talking about if we use that phrase, which is just normally people say it as something inhuman, negative, intelligent.
Mm-hmm. And then it's also that, for me, I always say like demon is there's a deeply religious connotation behind it.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of it's heavily associated with kind of Judeo-Christian beliefs and you can argue though that like, hey, the Catholic Church is just a rebranded paganism.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of pagan rituals that the Catholic Church has practiced for, well, truth be told, probably 4,000 years.
Yeah.
Everything. So it's, I then wonder like, okay, like maybe there is something to demons because of the deep knowledge that kind of religious organization has of the past and of spirituality going back before, when all people could do was sit around and think. There was no distraction. When you would ponder on spirituality and faith, you would, a lot of interesting thoughts came out of that because there was no screens, there was no radio, there was no play. I mean, it was really, you were deep in meditation and a lot of cool things happen as you can say.
As I can attest to, you get passwords.
But and the funny thing too, we should probably address too, is we often would get a lot of people asking us about portals.
Oh my God, so much, yeah.
And I kind of want to go into that, how we came up with the name Portals to Hell. So originally, Portals to Hell was a paranormal caving show. Like the first concept was essentially investigating like subterranean caverns and caves and mines that were allegedly haunted. And it was going to be called hellholes. And we evolved past that when we realized, well, there's really not a whole lot of like, hellholes. Like it's going to be a really short series. Like maybe, you maybe get 10 episodes out of this. And then in, talking with the good folks at Travel, it became Portals to Hell. And the whole point was we were going to go investigate the scariest, most sinister places we could find, because at the time in 2017, 18, portals was like the very hot button word in the paranormal world. So it's kind of, and we named it Portals to Hell initially because we wanted it to be like, hey, we're taking the viewer through a portal to like this crazy place we're going. It was never about like we're hunting for portals.
Right.
And people would always be like, well, there's no portal there. And I was like, because it's just a fucking name. Okay, it's a good name.
We're not actually looking for portals.
Well, if Rick and Morty was here, it would be great. Anyway, back to Bobby Mackey's.
Bobby Mackey's.
They were adamant there was a portal there.
So, but also everybody we spoke to, like not just the staff or volunteers at Bobby Mackey. We did that whole witness roundtable thing, which I love doing, by the way.
Oh, that's so much fun.
Yeah. And every single person rose their hand for, is there a portal?
Oh, yeah. It's like it's funny when we started putting the show together, Bobby Mackey's was like the first place that came up about a paranormal portal.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe there is.
There's something at Bobby's because I'll tell you, I met with that guy, Dan Smith, who he would not meet us at the location.
Yeah.
Refused. And I've met witnesses before who are like that. And, you know, sometimes they're like, oh, no, they're a little hesitant, but they'll eventually go back. This guy, adamant, never stepping foot. And he was a ghost hunter. So I guess maybe I had never met him before. And again, skeptical Katrina. I always kind of have my guard up where I'm like, maybe this is for clout. It was not. This guy was 100% genuine. I absolutely believe what he's telling me as far as his experiences go. And the way he put it to me is that going there completely derailed his life. Absolutely affected him negatively to the point where he was suicidal. And what's interesting about that, it's actually how I got into counseling. It was like 80% of the reason I started volunteering, because when I was working on Paranormal State, I was interviewing all the clients, and so many people would tell me that they were suicidal or homicidal.
Oh, wow.
From the paranormal activity they were having in their house. So what Dan was describing wasn't all too uncommon, although it's jarring.
Yeah.
But but it's also interesting that he's not the only person that has been to Bobby Mackey's that has that story.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just, I don't think this is a case of hysteria with people. I really think there's something going on there.
Yeah. And you can't have that many, like, it's got to be thousands of people have investigated there at this point.
Yeah.
You can't have that many people all saying it's something without there being something.
Yeah.
Our experience, though, unfortunately, wasn't necessarily exactly how people kind of said.
It makes me wonder, though. So let's take the Catholic view of Bobby Mackey's, the Christian view, which is that there is a demon there. There's an infestation. So they wouldn't necessarily want to show themselves, because if they did, we might have the power to remove them. We might come back with reinforcements.
And we've got cameras.
We totally have cameras. It's paranormal cops. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and what Bishop Long was telling us, there's the steps to the demonic, where it starts with infestation, moves to oppression. Some people put in obsession before that, then possession, then perfect possession. And so, you know, if we're taking that view of it, I kind of feel like they would sidestep us, not want to reveal, which is curious, because then you and I end up in the ER on the same day.
Yeah.
Just a couple, what was it, like 48, 72 hours after we left Bobby Mackey's, we had this experience, which is totally, again, looking through the Catholic lens, that's how they would operate. Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, I ended up in the ER because my daughter randomly busted her head open, like totally random, on a swing, and just hit her head. You had like a weird little freak.
Yes. So it was so weird how it happened, and they didn't show the whole thing in the episode at the end. And I think originally they weren't even going to show it. And we were like, guys, this is really actually effed up, because what are the chances of this happening? And so the whole story is, I was at home. I'm on the East Coast. Jack's on the West Coast. It's probably like 2-something in the afternoon on the East Coast. I was doing my aerobics and in my house, and I tripped on one of my dog's chew toys and heard like 3 cracks in my ankle.
Oof.
And I was like, fuck, I broke my ankle. And my asshole neighbor that I lived above at the time heard me screaming and didn't come and help me. So I'm like on my floor screaming.
So Philly.
Yeah, it's so Philly. And no, actually Philly, we lived outside of Philly. Philly people would have helped me. She left me writhing in pain. So I called my husband. I'm like, you have to come home. I think I broke my ankle. So he comes home. We lived across the street from the hospital. So we go to the hospital. Luckily, it was just a sprain, but I was in the ER. And when I got home, I think I texted you right away. And no. When I got home, I checked my Facebook messages, and I had a message from a friend of mine who's a psychic. I had met him one time. He had no idea what I was working on, because it was season 1. I wasn't telling people. Like, I keep my projects close to my chest for the most part until everything's out and we can talk about things. And so nobody knew what I was working on. And he sent me a message and he said, I don't know what you're doing. He's like, but something followed you home and it's not good. Like, it's dark, it's negative. Like, you need to be careful. And the time code of his message was the time I sprained my ankle.
Wow.
Like, so as he's rating me this, I'm like on my floor, you know, screaming for my neighbor who like didn't help me. And then I texted you and I was like, did anything weird happen to you today? You're like, nope, everything's fine. And then a couple hours later, you text me back and you said, actually, I was in the ER today.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was, because my daughter busted her head and it was the evening for me. But then about a day later, I went to see a friend of mine who was visiting in town, and he was with a girl that he was dating who is not a kind of a vocal medium. Like, she's kind of has something and just kind of keeps it to herself. And I met them out, whatever, and my buddy connected me. He's like, hey, she wants to tell you something, connected us through text. And she's like, hey, something followed you. I don't know what you're doing. Exact same message. I don't know what it is you're doing, but you have some kind of an attachment. And I just think it's so strange that, we'd investigated Bobby Mackey's. It wasn't particularly crazy. We had some things happen, some strange, Melmeter readings and, a few bumps and bangs and, Cindy's, which we'll get into, Cindy's psychic sweep was pretty profound. But it definitely shook me up. And then there's the stuff that didn't even make it into the edit at what happened with the production manager on set.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And this is where like things got really weird. So, besides having that, Katrina and I having that event, independently of each other, we had a production manager who was very much a skeptic of the paranormal. And he went down into the basement, and we only know he did this because there were the stationary cameras that were recording. And we saw this after the fact. He went down to the basement and was like, I think this is all bullshit. Just saying this out to just opening himself up to the room and verbally said, I think this is all bullshit. If you're real, if anything's really here, come at me, bro. Like, I dare you, come at me. Within a couple hours, he had to be removed from set because he felt like he said that there was fire burning under his skin. He couldn't be there. He was like freaking out. He went red. He was like, I can't be here. I have to leave. And he literally left. And we didn't see him for like 24 hours till like 24 hours later. That was interesting. And like, I wanted that to play, but we couldn't use it because we ended up replacing him on the show. And there was like an issue with like, we didn't want to go to him to get a release because he kind of left on bad terms. That's why we ended up removing the whole thing, because we didn't want to have like a fuzzed out face just for credibility reasons, because it's like, well, that could have been anyone.
Right, yeah.
So it was a, between, when you break it all down from what happened with you and I, what happened with the production manager, and then with Cindy's psychic sweep.
Yeah.
There's something to that place.
Which I think Cindy, it wasn't in the episode either, but I think at one point, didn't she say, I think she said it to Elaine, like, you're going to break your ankle?
Something, yeah.
There was something about an ankle in her reading when we were upstairs in Carl Lawson's apartment. Mm-hmm. But she said it to Elaine, who was our showrunner. And I mean, just from working with psychics for so long, sometimes they get their wires crossed or they interpret their messages wrong. Yeah. So I wonder if that was a message to me that she thought maybe it was for Elaine.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Cindy, we've since worked with Cindy a ton. You had never worked with Cindy at that point.
I had. That was my first time meeting her.
Yeah. And Cindy, I had worked with from like a producing standpoint, because I tried to make a TV show about her and being a psychic and a medium and all that in the past. But I got to say, like, right off the bat, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, she was so spot on. And I, once again, being the skeptic, I'm like, all right, who told her?
Right.
Who told her this, that, and the other? Because she knew things about, I mean, listen, when you're flying into Cincinnati, Ohio, right? That's the only information we give our psychics. We tell them, here's your flight. Here's the city you're going into. That's it. We'll have someone pick you up. They don't even know the location of the hotel. They don't know the location we're investigating. They don't know. So like theoretically, we could have just investigated somewhere in Cincinnati, Ohio. We're in Kentucky, which is about an hour and a bit drive from Cincinnati. But she had so many things that were so spot on that it was wild.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had the same thought you did of like who tipped her off.
Yeah.
Because she was so on the money about so many things.
Yeah.
But since working with Cindy, she's consistently proven herself.
Mm-hmm.
She's the real deal.
Yeah. There's like my two favorite mediums ever is Michelle Bellinger and Cindy Kaza.
That's what I say too.
Yeah. They are they're on a different level.
Yeah. 100%, because they get so much detail.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Chris Fleming. When we've worked with him, like he's really good at historical locations.
Yeah.
Because he just goes to another time period. I don't know what happens to him, but he pulls out so much detail about historical places.
Yeah. Who was we only ever worked with him a couple times. Who was the gentleman that had the Ouija board? Remember that?
Oh, Tim Shaw.
Tim Shaw.
My buddy
yeah,
Tim Shaw. He's so good.
Yeah, Tim's great. Yeah. That's been like, I was always kind of like, about Ouija boards, but the times that we've done a Ouija with him, I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like that thing just flies around and you're like, you would feel if someone's pulling it.
No, totally. And I think a lot of times with Ouija boards, they look at it as it's very similar to like dowsing rods.
Mm-hmm.
It's the practitioner
Yeah.
who makes it, I don't want to say makes it happen because it sounds like they're faking it. It's not. But it's like the same way of you need a certain person's energy to kind of activate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like a battery.
So Cindy she was doing, what's it called? The writing.
Automatic writing.
Automatic writing. Yes. Had you had any experience with automatic writing before that investigation?
Not in the way that I don't think we ever had a psychic do it to get information. I know I've worked with clients in the past who claim that they could do it, but I don't think I've ever actually seen someone do it except for Cindy.
Yeah. I think what stands out to me the most is that when she's doing it, how fast she does it.
Yes. Yeah.
Like for me, if I'm writing something, from the time it comes to my head to get to the tip of my finger while I'm writing, like there's a delay.
Yeah.
There's no fucking delay with her. She's like those old school printers that would just
Ching.
Yeah. It just like, and pages and pages and pages.
And also detailed.
Yeah.
Like so detailed to the story. And we know the story. We know the facts that we're looking at, and she's able to pull them right out from those writings. I was very impressed with Cindy.
Yeah. We definitely get spoiled doing, when you do paranormal investigations like we do, we get spoiled just because of the locations we go to and like the mediums and researchers we have.
Yeah. It's interesting because there's a drawback to the shows sometimes, I think, with the paranormal because you are in such a limited time.
Mm-hmm.
You have such limited time at locations, and you're kind of popping in and out, and I wonder how much justice we can do a place because of that. But at the same time, because you have a budget behind things, you're able to bring out people like Michelle, like Cindy, and incredible researchers, incredible scientists that you can talk to. So it's, and I know it's a little bit of a give and take that way when you're working in TV for it.
Yeah. Do you have any pre-investigation rituals?
I sleep a lot and I avoid things because I get stressed out. So I'm like, I just need to watch a lot of TV and sleep.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I do the same shit. Like I don't. Yeah, you kind of hold because they're really long days.
Yeah,
people like it's. You don't see it, but like we're 12, 13 hours on set, and it's like, and for us, it's like, you have to. I don't want to use the word perform, but like we have to deliver. We have to deliver ultimately. Yeah. That's the term, because if we're just kind of like tired and burnt out, like that's boring.
Well, it's also, we do on Portals to Hell, we do OTFs, which are on the flies. Mm-hmm. And those are the interviews you guys see us do where they kind of pull us aside and they're like, Jack, what's happening right now? And it's always so funny to do it for a paranormal show, actually any interview for a paranormal show, because it's like you're trying to put parameters on something that doesn't have parameters.
Mm-hmm.
And I find just even trying to come up with some sort of conclusion is tiring.
Totally.
Because I'm like, I don't have all these answers, guys.
Yeah.
Like, but it is like, yeah, before we would go out for a shoot, it was just really hole up in my house and not talk to anybody for a couple of days.
Yeah.
And it's also, we're going to really cold buildings because we would always shoot starting like late summer
Mm-hmm.
into the winter. And a lot of these places don't have electricity or heat.
Yeah.
And so we were always freezing and long hours. And it's also, we're hearing the most horrible stories.
Oh my God, yeah. And
ever.
that takes a toll. It's like we're not dealing with happy subject matters. And it's, I mean, day in and day out of like death and sadness and loss and, you know, gruesome murders. And it's just like, oh man, it just like weighs on you.
It's too much for me.
Right? I mean, do you, you know, having had attachments or, you know, believe that you've had attachments, do you do like smudging when you go home and stuff?
Only if it's a special occasion, like a birthday.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
Birthday, bar mitzvah, weddings.
Birthday sage. No, I've only done it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, but did I ever do it for portals? I don't know that I've ever done it for portals. Have you done it?
Yeah, I've done it a few times. During season 2, that was the COVID season. I started having really intense shit happen around home.
At your home, that's right.
Yeah, like really fucking wild. Like seeing like the old hag in my room, and like Ari, my fiance, was seeing this like cloaked figure, and so it was. I was doing it a bit then, and I kind of now I do it like at the end of a season. Like I'll just, you know, a quick little, you know, sage or whatever, a little, you know, salt bath or something.
Yeah.
Just, you know, so nothing comes home to the kids.
Did you do it after Bobby Mackey's?
I did it after Bobby Mackey's, after the medium friend of mine called and was like, hey, she came over with some like sage, and, you know.
You just jogged my memory. I did too. I actually had that psychic that reached out to me when I talked to you. And then you were like, this psychic reached out to me. I'm like, oh my God, a psychic reached out to me too. What the hell? I contacted him. I told him what happened. And he said he could do a clearing of me remotely. So we like scheduled a time where he, from his home, I think he lives in Ohio, where he
Always Ohio.
He cleared me that way. And you know, I don't know, but he was like, there's some sticky stuff attached to you that I had to remove.
Okay.
I was like, okay.
I must say, I recall being a little disappointed. Because I was expecting, you know, Exorcist meets, you know, freaking Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Like, yeah. I wanted like, you know, Shakti Ma Kali Ma, and, you know, I wanted the whole thing, and it just didn't quite hit for me. But I do think what you were saying, there's something to the fact that, okay, if this is a demonic entity that is highly intelligent, kind of all-knowing, is thousands of years old, it's not going to want to show its hand to a professional camera crew. Or
a ghost hunter. Yeah. Like, unless they're alone and vulnerable. Because that's the thing. Like, so when we have our crew, there's a benefit for sure for having a crew. But I also think it makes you less vulnerable.
Yeah.
And for entities that have that kind of power, that have that kind of knowledge, the way they want to target you is when you're vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's sometimes why you guys might see us ask everybody to step out, just to see if it changes anything. But I think Bobby Mackey's is one of those places. And when I was there before, I actually slept in the middle of the dance floor by myself one night. And it was really effing scary, you know, because there's a feel there, and I don't know how to describe. It's so hard to put that into context because it's so subjective.
Yeah.
But it is very much that feeling that you're in danger, that you're not safe. Something is not okay. And I remember feeling that at Bobby Mackey's when I slept over. And it's different in a group. at the same time, though, I've met a lot of people that have gone there in groups who have been, again, thrown up against walls or ended up with scratches when they're with people. And then putting on the Catholic lens, somebody would say those people are vulnerable for some reason. Those people are being targeted for some reason.
Very interesting. Because I mean, I ran into people recently. I was actually back in Cincinnati. I was doing a convention, and all these people were coming up to me. Oh, we were just at Bobby Mackey's. It's still crazy. It's worse than ever. And I guess apparently someone was recently killed in the parking lot.
What?
Yeah. So like that place is collecting more souls.
Let's rewind that. What happened
I guess
with that?
there was some altercation and someone got shot in the parking lot, but that's happened a few times there, I think.
Yeah.
I remember when we were there, they were like, oh yeah, there's been shootouts here.
Yeah.
And you know, it's that place has, aside from having some mysterious portal, has definitely had its fair share of tragedies just by the fact that it's kind of a rough bar.
Yeah, even before Mackey took over, there was in between the mobsters owning it and Bobby, there was another establishment there. I think it was called Hard Rock Cafe, but it wasn't the chain. It wasn't. Although
Hard Rock with a Q.
yeah. But they were known for like the violence that happened there.
Wow.
So then I think a lot of people would wonder, then the question is there something on that property that causes people to act,
To lose it.
in violent ways?
Yeah. Possibly. I can tell you that I was violently sleepy from, because a little behind the scenes when we were filming that episode, the production manager who tried to entice Satan ordered for our crew meal Olive Garden.
Yeah.
Here's a little like pro tip. When you're doing night shoots, don't feed everyone giant bowls of pasta and endless breadsticks because you get really fucking tired.
We also had soup and salad.
We did, but I don't think many people ate much of the soup and or salad. It was like, oh, seafood pasta in Kentucky. This is going to be a great idea. Because I was watching it and I saw one point, my eyes are just like, ugh. But I do fall asleep a lot while filming.
You do get sleepy. You're a sleepy boy.
I do get sleepy. I've fallen asleep, and I think I get drained though.
Oh, like psychically?
Yeah, I think I get like energetically and psychically drained.
I actually think, and I've told you this before, but I do think you're more sensitive than you're willing to admit.
I don't know. Because I so want to be. I'm like, I want to see more shit than I've seen.
Yeah.
But I do have, it's always like everyone. It's always when you're not really focusing, does stuff happen.
But I also think you have that side of you, and it's that cop side of you. Of I need to be objective, I need to be alert, I need to be aware. And I think although those are all important things to have as an investigator for sure, I think psychically then it kind of like it keeps you that way instead of this way. Yeah.
It's like Luke putting on the helmet, the blast shield.
Yeah.
So you can't, you gotta feel the force. Alrighty. I'm trying to think. Is there anything else that we're missing from?
Well, what did you think of the episode overall? Like, take away the investigation. How did you think the episode matched our experiences?
It's funny. Watching back the kind of first season, I really noticed that there was like a rawness. There was a kind of like and I always joke, this is like one of my favorite like joking lines, but there's like a childlike sense of wonder.
Yeah.
Like we didn't have like a crazy agenda.
Yeah. So yeah, it was very much Scooby-Doo-ish.
Yeah.
But scary.
Yeah.
It wasn't campy. Like season 1 was very scary. And I love that about season 1.
Yeah.
It just has a very creepy vibe that.
Oh, we can't end this without talking about the fucking bloodletting ritual.
Oh, how did we miss
How did we forget about that?
Let's dive in.
That was, and then we used the luminol from the police department to actually, we saw the blood in there, or what was, most likely organic, material.
Yeah.
That was weird.
I met him.
You what?
I met him.
Where? How did you meet Mr. Bloodletter?
I met him. Well, it was BloodCon 2019. I met him at a conference actually.
Wow.
And he lives in my area. We live like I think half an hour from each other. And he's actually really, really nice. He was such a sweet person. And he came up to me, him and his girlfriend or his fiance, I can't remember, but they were both like, hi, it's so nice to meet you. And he's like, I was the one in the well, like bloodletting. And I was like, oh shit. Okay.
In my mind, he's a goth kid. That's what I made. I pictured like a goth kid. He modeled himself after the Crow.
No, he's very, I don't know if, he wasn't like a polo wearing, kind of guy, but t-shirt jean kind of guy.
Just a normal Joe.
Normal guy. Yeah. Clean. Like he wasn't like, he wasn't wearing like, there was no like goth makeup or anything like clean shaven, all that stuff like that. And he was very, very nice. He was such a gentleman. And he was like, yeah, I'm the one you were talking about. And
oh my God.
In that episode, I was like, oh, I'm like, well, how did that go down exactly? And his whole thing was, look, I know. He's like, I'm just trying to push the boundaries. Like, what? Like, why can't I do that?
Yeah.
And so I understand it from that perspective, but at the same time, I'm like, because you're like cutting yourself in a hole, like with a Ouija board. I don't know. Every horror movie tells you not to do that.
Right.
So,
but I guess his point is, but why?
But why? Like, because there's no so it goes back to that thing of why are we putting parameters on something that by definition doesn't have parameters?
Yeah.
It only has parameters once we get into cultural and religious beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
But if those don't exist, or if those aren't accurate, or if those aren't true, then maybe we're missing everything by following that. But I think too, there's always that piece of me. And we even talked about it in the episode. There's always that side of me because I've worked with people like Lorraine, or because I've seen the shit that I've seen, where it becomes that question of, but what if? What if all those people are right? What if that religion is right? What if, the person who's claiming to get possessed actually is fucking possessed?
Yeah.
And then where does that leave me going through life?
Yeah.
I always kind of have a little bit of a hesitation of, do I really want to open that door?
Did Lorraine, because you work with the Warrens.
Yeah. Well, Lorraine, I never met Ed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with working with Lorraine, was she 100% like, nope, without a doubt, this is real. Mm-hmm. Demons are real. They're not wrong. Like, the Catholic Church is right. Like, she was a through and through believer.
Through and through. But the thing to remember about the Warrens is they were religious demonologists. Mm-hmm. So anything you would hear them say is going to come through that filter. Yeah. Their beliefs filter through that. So, I think for me, I kind of take it with a grain of salt. But when I've had really intense experiences, like the one that really fucking shook me was I was working in England in Pontefract. Do you know where that is? No. It's outside of Yorkshire. Okay. And they had a really horrible, bloody battle on this land. And I got scratched there. And what came flooding to my mind in that moment was Lorraine's voice. Because, again, I have like my little objective Katrina glasses on. And I'm like, there's got to be a reason for this. But then I think of Lorraine. And I hear her voice in my head telling me, once they know you, they'll always know you. Mm. Once you've been marked, you've been marked. Once, like, all this creepy shit that she would say to me. Just like, Jesus Christ. So that sticks with me because, again, here, like, you and I try to be objective as much as we can. I think we do a really good job of that. And I think also because, again, cop background, and I volunteer for crisis counseling. So that is very much about being objective and being present and trying not to go wild with your imagination. But at the same time, I'm like, here we are trying to put these objective parameters on things. And maybe we're wrong. Yeah.
I guess, we'll find out one day.
One day.
Do you... Because that is pretty fascinating, though, like that you got to have that much time with Lorraine. Yeah. And like in working with her and her kind of sharing that knowledge with you, and then you doing Paranormal State, which was very heavily focused on kind of, at least the show anyway, it came across a lot about, it was demonology, and it was a very kind of had a heavy Catholic kind of lens to a lot of the investigations, or at least the episodes that I saw. Yeah. Do you think you've ever actually encountered a demonic entity? Like, nope, that's a demon, and you know which one?
Yeah, I think so. I think there were a couple, and again, a demon's just a label. So I think, yes, too, there was something very powerful and negative at work with a couple of clients we had, because there was one client, he had something like, I think he dropped out of a school, like he didn't even finish high school. And this guy would black out and start speaking other languages.
Oh, shit.
And I was not there for this one part, but everyone saw Michelle. Michelle was there. She wears this very long trench coat. Everyone saw her coat get pulled up. When Heather and I were there one night alone, the door, it was like somebody put their whole body weight up against this door. We were the only ones in the house. We heard very clear footsteps. They were recorded. The things that we were told personally, because that's the thing, like the demonic, it's not so... Those hauntings aren't so in your face, like the chair moved and this happened. It works on such a psychological and emotional level for people. And it happens slowly. Like it's not an overnight thing. It's such a slow thing that happens because, and again, according to, demonologists, it has to happen that way because they need other people to think you're crazy. Because if you're crazy, then it's not real. And if it's not real, then nobody will try to do anything about it.
Yeah.
So they target people. And what Lorraine always told me is that it's like a house with a bad foundation, is that if there's any cracks, things are going to get in there.
Mm-hmm.
Pests are going to get in. And that's how the demons work.
Interesting.
It's scary.
Yeah. Have you ever seen anyone possessed?
I think I've seen people under intense oppression, which is the step before possession, according to the Catholic Church. And that's when you see people maybe go into these bouts of, blacking out.
Yeah.
Not acting right, not acting who they normally are. There were 2 cases I was on that we believe there was one we think was an infestation. It was actually the first case I met Lorraine. And it was so funny because I remember meeting her for the first time. I was so scared to meet her because on one hand, this is the woman I've read about. This is the woman I've seen like shows about. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, I'm like, she works with demons. What the fuck? Like, you know what I mean? I don't know if I want to do this. And the other case was like a year later. Both these cases, this is really wild. I was interviewing somebody and the first one felt like I had drunk like an entire handle of vodka. I was in the middle of this interview and it just felt like instant, like I was drunk and I couldn't focus. I couldn't pay attention to anything. Like it was that whole body feeling. And we had a rule in PRS that I follow to this day. Like I won't drink 24 hours before I go to work. And it's not like I'm a big drinker anyway, but during those times I was at the number 2 party school in America. So like, the policy needed to be there. The second time I was interviewing this woman, talking to her, and it was like I was tripping because the whole wall behind her started to melt.
Oh shit.
When I asked Lorraine about that, she said, you're being psychically attacked by the demons because they want to throw you off course. They want to get you out of that house because you're trying to stop what they're doing.
Interesting. They're like, hit her with the vodka.
Yeah.
The spiritual vodka.
Give her some acid. But yeah, it was weird. And I have those experiences and it makes me, even though when you and I were at Bobby Mackey's, we didn't have those experiences. Yeah. It makes me think not every single person is lying.
Yeah.
Like maybe there's 1 or 2. I don't know. I'm just throwing out a number.
Even out of 1,000, if one person is like, no, I had this experience, it's irrefutable to me.
Yeah.
Then that's something.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like with Bobby Mackey's, there are too many people that have come forward that I think are credible. And I know other people met that think are credible. You met people that you thought were credible when we were there.
Yeah.
That it's too much to be nothing.
Yeah.
Even if it ends up being explainable someday, something's happening at Bobby Mackey's.
I think one of these days I'll probably have to go back there alone, like just do like a regular ghost hunt without cameras and just kind of see if it's a different vibe.
Yeah.
Man, just kind of go off the beaten path.
I'll go with you.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Okay.
Next time we're in northern Kentucky.
Which is all the time.
All the time. Alrighty. Well, that was episode 2. Bobby Mackey's, what's the full name? Yeah, Bobby Mackey's Music World in Wilder, Kentucky. Katrina, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And if you're listening, please, or if you're watching, click subscribe, like the page, do all that fun YouTube stuff, and you can find this podcast everywhere where you can get podcasts. So yeah, thanks for listening and thanks for the support. And Katrina, till next time.
Till next time, my friend.
High fives.
High fives.